I got the greatest wife, man. She sat and basically the first 2 weeks in AAA, I felt bad. I felt sorry for myself. I was like sulking. I was playing horrible. And I remember my wife, literally, we had a 9-month-old at the time, and she was like, look, if you're going to suck, then just come home. Like, I need you at home. You know what I'm saying? Like, I need help with this baby. But if you're going to work and you're going to do what you've always done, let's do it.
What's up and welcome to the No One Is Watching podcast, where we explore high-performing teams and individuals, dig deep to find out what makes them tick. Whether it's in sports, business, the military, or everyday life, this show highlights the DNA shared by elite performers, the process through which they leverage that talent, and ultimately, it helps you apply those lessons to your own life, business, or team.
What'd you think of Rory at the Masters?
Well, it was awesome, man. I mean,
Cool to see?
my heart was like breaking for him, but I'm telling you what, man, that was tough to watch.
It was, yeah. I'm not sure. I'm not sure I've seen that much emotion out of a golfer in a long time. Right? Not that I watch a ton of golf, but
let me tell you, if he wouldn't have won that, I don't know if he ever would have been the same between us, man. Honestly,
yeah. I know, and it was clear in his interview after. That it was weighing on him, right? He's like, because it was one of like the first things he said. He's like, I don't know what we're going to talk about at next year's Masters, right? So it was clearly like weighing on him. And
I hated it because I like Justin Rose, and I'm like, why couldn't it be somebody else that he beat? Like,
I know.
You know,
that putt that Rose hit to tie him was
awesome.
Incredible.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and it's just cool to see. I mean, I'm getting a little bit more into golf. You know, I live in a place where golf is huge, and my middle son's playing a little bit, so I'm starting to try to pay attention a little bit. It's been fun. Just like it's similar to baseball, and like I don't think you can appreciate how hard it is to do what those guys do until you try to do it yourself. You know?
Oh, dude, and watching. I mean, like, think about how many times in his life he could go out and put 100 balls from 125 yards, and he probably hits the green 99 out of 100, just hitting the green.
Yeah, it's wild.
You know,
it's completely wild. Yeah. So I mean, look, you're old and washed up now, but you used to be a pretty big deal, right? Like, the kids these days, they probably don't know the whole story, but I kind of want to talk a little bit about it, right? What was high school like for you? What was like the recruiting experience like for you?
It was crazy because, this was still not in the days of, you would get letters written to you by the coaches, right? Like that's how old it was. But, for me, from a football standpoint, man, when you start getting letters from Joe Paterno, Bobby Bowden, it was insane. Steve Spurrier, I remember Steve Spurrier was the first one. And I'm like, Steve Spurrier wrote, whether he wrote it or not, looking back now, he probably didn't write, he probably just signed it. But the fact of the matter is, I would talk to these coaches on the phone, and I always remember thinking like, wow, I grew up watching these guys. And, I think for me, it was kind of a surprise because now, from the age of like 6th grade on, there's all these rankings and the kids are doing this. Like my mom and dad did such a good job with me, my brother, and my sister, just go play, Going into my freshman year, my dad wasn't like, hey, your goal is to get a scholarship to so-and-so. He's like, just go play baseball, go play football. Like, that's what you're good at. And so when all this really started my junior year, because remember, no one really got recruited freshman year back then. It was like you kind of started going into your junior year. So when all that started, I remember being like, Dad, man, do I got a chance to do this? And he's like, I think so. He's like, don't screw it up. But I think you got a chance to do this. But I always appreciate it because my dad let me have the best experience, Billy, for my high school. And I see kids now, man, they're sitting out high school senior year so they don't get hurt and doing this. And it's like, I turned 41 this past year, but the year before my 40th, my 6 best friends from high school that we all played football and baseball together at Parkview, we went to Mexico with the wives to celebrate our 40th. And literally all we did for 5 days was have margaritas and sit in the pool and literally tell stories of, when someone did something stupid on the football field. And it was like, and so I tell people all the time, that's why I'm so glad I played in high school and I did that
Yeah.
stuff and didn't go to all these other travel tournaments and all these other things. Like I was there with my buddies, man, and that's what I remember most.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to touch on that for sure. Because, you got a great perspective on it. And, going through, was there did you have a preference, football or baseball? Did you like, as a kid growing up, high school, was it, you like them both the same or what?
Baseball was always my first love, man. I loved the grind of baseball. I loved knowing I was gonna play every day, right? Or when I got to the big leagues, I was gonna have a game every night. So if I was horrible the night before, I could come back the next day and have a great game. Now I will tell you this: the 2.5 hours on a football field on a Friday night, man, there's nothing like it. You prep all week, the emotion and all that. And so baseball is always my first love. Where I think it got so big was, in Atlanta and Georgia, football's so big down here, man. It rules. High school football is everything. And so when I started getting recruited by all these teams and these coaches calling me, I think football kind of started to go up on my list.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as much as I loved it, though, I remember my dad would always kind of bring me back down a level and say, son, look, I think you can be a great football player, but you're pretty special on the baseball field. And he's like, you might want to. So I always felt like he helped me keep that in perspective. Like, I would have loved to play in college football. I'd have loved to run down the hill at Clemson. I mean, heck, I'm still wearing my Clemson
Yeah, I see.
shirt here. Dabo is a great buddy of mine, man. We talk all the time. And actually, every time I talk to Dabo, he's always like, you still got 4 years left of eligibility. And I'm like, dude, I could probably hold an extra point. And that's about all I could do now. But so for me, it was just remembering, though, that baseball was my first love. But I was lucky because I found two sports that I was so passionate about, and I was good at them both. And so, I just kind of played what was in season and loved doing it.
Yeah, the 2.5 hours on game day in football, it's tough to duplicate that experience.
You can't replicate it, man. You can't.
Yeah. It's all the other times that aren't so fun, right? Like all the practices.
The Monday watching film for an hour, getting yelled at by your coach, and then going out to walk through the repetition. Those are the things that you hate. But, man, when Friday morning comes and you wake up and you go to school and you put your jersey on and, like, you know what's coming, that was the best. That was like Christmas for me every Friday.
Yeah, absolutely. So you wind up forgoing Clemson and going and obviously signing with the Braves, local kid, first round, the whole deal. You get to the big leagues pretty quick. Were you 21 when you got there?
21, yeah.
So you got like 2 years in the minor leagues and you're up there. You kind of set the world on fire, get a whole bunch of attention, right? And then I'm curious, 21-year-old kid, playing in your backyard, team you grew up loving, the whole deal. What's that off season like for you? When you're on the cover of Sports Illustrated doing all this stuff, everybody's, they're building the statue for you already, right? And like, where's your headspace at 21 years old?
Oh, dude, I got invited to play Augusta National for the first time. I played that 2 or 3 times. Speaking of the Masters, I was getting invited to all this stuff to speak here. It was insane, honestly. And, I'll tell you this, to be able to do it with, Brian McCann, who was the second round pick behind me. And we grew up playing together and verse each other since 10 years old. So to have one of your best friends to be able to go through with it was absolutely huge. And we actually lived in an apartment together. And, man, we'd watch college football on
Were you guys tight before pro ball?
We were, yeah. Yeah, we were. We actually, the day both of us got drafted, we kind of had a combined draft party at our house.
That's incredible, man. What a cool experience.
A bunch of his buddies from Duluth High School came over. All my buddies were there. And so that was the cool thing for me to go through it with someone that and you love, that's going to be in your foxhole. Like, don't get me wrong, the experience itself would have been awesome even if it was just me. But, and that's why I love baseball, like to celebrate it with other people and to be a part of it with other people just makes it that much more meaningful.
Yeah, that's cool. I didn't realize you guys were tight before pro ball, and
yeah,
knowing the Braves and how they operated, you guys probably knew going into that day you're going to wind up being teammates with some of those pre-draft deals that were being cut, and especially with the kids in their backyard, they weren't getting beat.
We had an idea, but you never know what happens. Funny enough, we actually sent out a letter my dad and me to a bunch of the teams and basically said we wanted like $5 million and for me to play at Clemson or I wasn't going to sign,
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
remember a
I know
few
that
teams
trick.
writing back and yeah. I remember the Cincinnati Reds had like the 4th pick and they were like, we're not buying that crap. And I'm like, well, then draft me and find out,
Right. Roll the dice. Yeah.
Roll the dice. And I always say, Roy Clark knew how to manipulate a draft a little bit.
Yeah, he did very well. I remember scouting. I was working for the Indians, now Guardians, scouting, and Jason Hayward's draft year in Atlanta. And man, you couldn't get to a game where you could see him swing the bat. I think they told him, "Don't you dare swing." It was like impossible. They had scouts up in the trees, with binoculars, making sure. And lo and behold, right, he winds up Brave. So that's actually kind of like looking back on it now. It's kind of like a little bit of the romance of the game and some of those cat and mouse games that went on. Particularly for the Braves in their backyard, right? Because there's just so many good athletes coming out of Georgia.
There are, and the cool thing is, like anything, you saw it in Atlanta, like the people that grow up. I grew up going to games, 15, 20 games a year at Turner Field, man, watching Maddox and Glavine and those guys. So it was like, and the Falcons weren't any good. The Hawks weren't any good. So it was like, University of Georgia is not what they are now in football. So it was kind of like the Braves were always the deal. And so when I got drafted by them, like it truly was, really cool. And then when you meet the people in place with Dayton Moore and Chino Cudahy and Jim Beecham, guys that just cared for you. They rode you hard, man. I remember thinking I signed and they kissed my butt, and then I got shipped to Danville, Virginia, man. And Jim Beecham ran me until I almost threw up. And I remember thinking, it's a little different than just a month ago. But but it's what I needed, right? It's what I needed.
Yeah, for sure. When were you first exposed to like the business side of the game? Was that it? Kind of signing and then getting introduced to the Pro Bowl, or was there something else that kind of triggered that for you?
No, the business side I remember right off the bat because after draft night, I'm not going to throw this guy under the bus, even though I am a little bit, and because that's who I am. But Frank Wren was dealing with a lot of the negotiations, and they had come to a deal that was like he called before, and my dad's from Boston, dude. He is old school. My dad is a man of his word, and that's how I kind of grew up. And so they called, and they were kind of like, how does just north of $2 million sound? And we said, okay, that's great. So they called draft night, and they said, well, all we got is $2 million. And I remember my dad saying, well, then we're not signing. And I didn't sign for 6 weeks. A lot of people don't know. I didn't sign till July 12th. And I remember just sitting there, and I actually ended up going and playing in the USA trials in Joplin, Missouri after I got drafted. Because I wanted to play. I was just sitting at home and not doing anything. And I remember Dayton Moore calling me, what are you doing? What if you get hurt? And I'm like, dude, what do you want me to do? I'm not just going to sit here all summer. And so John Sherholtz called me and my dad and was like, what's taking this thing so long? And literally my dad told him what happened. And John Sherholtz goes, well, how does 2.2 sound? And my dad was like, great, we got a deal. And he was like, you're telling me this is all I had to do? And my dad was like, yeah. And so it's funny. I learned right off the bat a little bit that like this is a business. And there's things you can't take personal. It's just part of the deal. But, my dad and me, we were such like shake hands and this and that. And I'll never forget this, Billy, and why I love, God rest his soul, Paul Snyder is one of the great human beings of all time. Right before the draft happened, they were in my house, him and Dayton Moore and Roy Clark. And Paul got my mom and dad to the side and said, my parents' names are Karen and Dave. And he said, Karen and Dave, remember, you only get to do this once. Make sure you get what your kid's worth. And I mean, here's a guy who's working for the Braves, right? And who should probably not be saying that stuff, but he's just an awesome dude. And he was like, this is how I feel, and this is what, and my dad to this day will always tell you, he remembers that conversation. and how much it meant to him. And just, Paul's a man of his word too, man. And it was like he was going to make sure that I was taken care of. And so, again, I learned from an early point there's a business side, but there's also great people in the game like that you learn to grow and trust. And you know how it is, man. There were people you could trust and you could tell things to, and there were people that you couldn't. And that was part of the deal.
Yeah. No, I spent a lot of time, not so much anymore, but thinking about that, talking about that with people, and always tried to just be transparent, right? And I realized I was fortunate to, early in my career, I worked for Kevin Towers, who former player, just kind of baseball guy through and through, right? And he always had a great way. It was just who he was, just very comfortable in the clubhouse, had a great way about him, communicating with players. And it was his nickname was the gunslinger, right? So he was a straight shooter. And
that's what you want, right? Like I've always said this, guys just want to be told the truth, man. Like if I'm not good enough to play against righties anymore and I could only platoon late in my career, just tell me that's what you think. I might not like it at first and I might not want to hear it, but I'm going to respect it. And eventually I'm going to embrace, the role that you get. But what guys don't like is when you're constantly lied to. And that's, I think, the thing that in baseball rubbed me the wrong way. And between me and you, as I do these now and talk to other people and other players, a lot of guys that I played with now are in front offices and doing stuff. And, one of my best friends in the game is Chris Getz, who's the GM of the White Sox. Mm-hmm. And we played together on the Royals. And I always tell Chris, I'm like, you remember the conversations we had on the plane having drinks, and you would always sit there and say, this guy's a liar. So just remember that as you're running what you are now. Guys just want the truth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, 100%. And some guys, I'm curious to hear your perspective on this, because you got, when you and I crossed paths, you were at the sort of the tail end of your career, right? You signed up for minor league deals, you got back up to the big leagues, and but you had clearly already been given that message by someone, whether it was directly or indirectly, right? That your profile as a player, your skill set is different than it once was, and sort of this is how we view you. Some guys, obviously, everybody would struggle to hear that initially, right? Some guys never, but it feels like some guys can never really accept it. Others, it's just such a personalized sort of evolution of your career, right? Where you have to kind of realize, this is what I can do, this is what I can't, this is my angle. Let me go make the most of it. What was that like for you?
I remember it hit me really in 15 when I went to the Phillies and had a good year there in Philadelphia. But I played against, lefties, of course. I still crushed lefties late in my career, and then match up righties, right? Like, and I knew my bat swing wasn't the same, man. I knew I didn't have the bat speed that I did when I was 27, 28 years old. Like, that's part of the game. And so for me, my biggest thing, Billy, is when you talk about it, and I remember sitting there talking to, Ryan Sandberg and then Freddie Gonzalez about it. And I'm like, look, I still bring a lot of value. Just use me the right way. I don't expect to go out there and get 3 hits off Max Scherzer anymore. Like, it's just, I'm not that player, but I still know if used the right way between what I can bring on the field and in the clubhouse, I can add a lot of value. And so I think that's the one thing guys have to be too, is you have to be realistic with yourself, man. I remember talking to Brian McCann in 19 when he came back with the Braves, and he was like, dude, it was like all of a sudden my bat, it was like someone was holding it and not letting it come through the zone. And so Brian would always say, if I'm used the right way, I can still bring a lot of value to this team. And so I think that's the tough thing, right, is having those conversations. But that's where you talk about the people skill, right? Like the thing is, I always told Chris Getz, like, because we still talk a lot, and he would call me, how do I have this conversation with this guy? And I'm like, dude, go to the hotel bar after a game, buy him a drink, and just have this talk. When you do that, guys understand it. Most of the time, you're telling a player what they already know. Yeah. The question is, do they want to admit it to themselves or not? Right. And when done the right way, I think guys understand it and guys respect it and guys know, okay, I got to change my mindset. And that's what I did. I went into Philly, and I remember telling Ryan Sandberg, like, I knew I was the best pinch hitter on the team. So I knew every 6th, 7th, 8th inning, dude, I could watch the game and see when my place was getting ready to come up. I'd walk my little tail down the cage. There was a guy that would throw BP, and he would throw gas to me from like 30 feet and get it ready. Mm-hmm. And I'd come up, put my batting gloves on, and it was such a great thing because Sandberg would just turn. He'd look at me. He'd give me the point, and it was like, bam, I'd go out on deck. And I knew that, and I embraced it. Yeah. But we had those conversations that I knew this was my role. And so when it was, I was ready to go, man.
Yeah, guys like that have that. And I'm sensitive to it, right? Because every professional athlete, right? Anybody that's, quite honestly, any high achiever that's ever done anything at a high level, the most humble guy in the world still has an ego, right? They're still like, I can do this. You want them to think they're invincible to a lot of extent, right? But then when you get to that point, you have those players like you that embrace the fact this is where I am now, and understand, like, don't run me out there for 150 games, right? Like, I'm not going to do well for you.
Yeah.
Right. And that's, those guys are hugely valuable, obviously, to the wins and the losses and the strategy, but the clubhouse perspective, my experience, I want to hear yours, particularly coming up with the Braves at the time you came up with the Braves, that clubhouse environment, what it was like. But a lot of the times, and at least teams that I was on, the real leaders in the clubhouse it wasn't your number one starter or your cleanup hitter. It was usually the backup catcher, the reliever, the pinch hitter, the utility infielder, the guys that had to have other traits about them to maximize their value or extend their careers or whatever it may be.
Yeah, 100%. Look at David Ross with the Cubs, when they won the World Series. He ended up playing a lot in the playoffs because he was hitting and they didn't have, he got hot at the right time, but he was a leader. He wasn't the star of that team.
What was your experience like coming up, as a rookie at 21, walking into that clubhouse? Were the guys that put their arms around you and kind of showed you the way?
Yeah, it was, but you had to earn your stripes, right? Like they were obviously more than willing to help, do whatever you wanted. Smoltzy, Chipper, Andrew, they were help. But the guy that I loved that really helped me out was 06. Edgar Renteria came over, and 06 and 07, he was part of the team. And he taught me how to prepare, man. I remember there was a game where we had bases loaded in the first inning, 2 outs, and I hit a ground ball to short, slow one, and I got thrown out by about that much at first. So about third, fourth inning, I'm sitting in the dugout, and Edgar Renteria comes over and he says, "Hey, how many sprints did you run before the game getting loose?" And I think I'd kind of dragged out there and might have ran, 1 or 2 real quick. And he said, "Dude, you have to be ready when that game starts. Whatever you got to do to get yourself ready." He said, "I feel like if you were fully stretched and fully ready, you beat that ball out. And that's an RBI, that's a hit, and that could completely change the game." And, I remember just sitting back going, wow, like, I took for granted like that I was just ready to go and doing this. And so guys like that to me were the ones that really invested, really saw the things. Tim Hudson, I remember one time came up to me and was like, "Dude, you need to be taking 15 minutes of live balls in the outfield every time." He's like, "You're so fast. But if you don't continue to do this in your routes, those little bloopers, the little balls down the line, like they can fall if you're not prepared and you're not ready." And I just remember guys like that speaking truth into you. And that's kind of when I saw that, I always wanted to be able to do that, to help guys through tough moments. Look, when things are going good, you don't need anybody to talk to you. You get up there, you get 2-3 hits a day. And perfect example, like right now, Austin Riley, has become one of my really good buddies. And, when did he text me? He texted me 10 days ago when he couldn't hit water if he fell out of a boat, and asking what I saw and doing this. He hit 2 home runs last night in Toronto. Do you think I heard from him? Heck no. He don't need me,
Yeah.
And so it's like, that's when you find out who the real guys are and who the real great clubhouse guys are, is when things are just upside down and you're not going well, man. In this game, you need guys to come beside you and pick you up. Because when you get hot for 2 weeks, I don't need anybody talking to me, man. I'm going to show up and get 2 hits a night. It's when you're 0 for 4, man, and you're trying anything you can to get on base. And so that's the clubhouse guy I always wanted to be, man. I wanted to come to the guys that were scuffling and, hey, give them a word of encouragement. And honestly, it's been huge, Billy, for me coaching my kids. I did my podcast, Pure Athlete, where we talk about youth sports all the time, man. And like in 2.5 years we've done it now, I've completely changed how I coach my kids. When the game starts, man, nothing but encouragement, man.
Yeah.
Nothing but, hey, you got this. Have fun. Enjoy it. Now, my kids know there's only 2 times I'll get on them during the games: when they don't hustle and when they cock an attitude at me or another coach.
Yeah.
Then I'll interfere. But during the games, man, I laugh because you have these parents yelling, don't swing at that, don't do that. And it just makes me laugh because I'm like, you think they wanted to swing at that
Right,
pitch?
right.
It's like, but then when they hear that negative, man, you immediately, I used to say, like, I remember I'd be hitting and you swing at a dumb pitch and I look in the dugout and your hitting coach going like this or something, it's like your mindset completely goes down.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to be an encourager for these other players and teammates of mine that were scuffling. And that's what they need. They don't need to be told 1,000 things. More than that, more than anything, you know what? They need to be told, hey, you're a great ball player, man. You just got to get back to simplifying and being a good ball player.
Well, we talked about Rory, right? Like the power of confidence in sports is really, I mean, life, not just sports, right? But like, it's really hard to pinpoint, but you can see it. You're like, this guy's got no confidence right now. And there's no chance. It does not matter. He could be the most talented guy in the field. He's not going to be successful just because he doesn't feel it.
You're 100% right. He went over that first putt on 18 to win in regulation. And his shoulders were slumped. Like I sat there, we watched it. My whole family was over there. I said, he's missing this putt 100%. Yeah. And somewhere in there, whether someone said something his caddy did, he stepped up and give him credit. He had a great drive in the playoff and a great iron shot, from 125. But it is, man, when you go up to that plate and if you're feeling unsure, 80% of the time you're going to make an out.
Yep. Yeah, I love what you guys are doing at Pure Athlete. I love that it's coming from a place of positivity and perspective. It's you talked about your recruiting experience, getting letters via snail mail, and now you're getting they get their highlight reels on Instagram at 9 years old, and they've got all this stuff going on and the hype videos, and everybody's got championship rings, from Chuck E. Cheese. It's
unreal, man.
Yeah.
It blows me away. And I tell people, look, I'm not saying don't challenge your kids and don't come watch me run a 12U softball practice, dude. I am intense. I'm loud. We're getting a lot. And that's what I tell the girls. We're going to practice hard, and I'm going to yell at you at practice. Like, I'm going to be on you at practice. But no, when Saturday hits and we step on the field as a team, you're going to hear encouragement, positivity, this kind of stuff. And that, but for me, that completely changed from doing this and coaching my own kids and seeing like the moment you really just hound them and get on them, the shoulders slump, the body language stinks. And when that happens, man, you're done. You know that. You're done.
Yep. Well, and then it becomes they're coming from a place of fear, no matter what they're doing,
Yep.
and the game's no longer fun. And look, the game becomes not fun for everybody at some point, right? It's either because your skills erode when you're 35 years old in the big leagues, or it's when you're, 14 and you realize you're just not good enough to play anymore. And you don't really want to sacrifice the things you need to, blah, blah, blah. But it should never be at 7. You know what I mean?
No, 100%. And like I said, even for me late in my career, I could have looked at it from a different way. Instead, I kind of looked at it. And I remember sitting there talking to John Hart and John Capalella and them asking me, what I can bring to the team. And I'm like, guys, you already know that answer. Like, my bat speed then all of a sudden at 35 just click, and now I'm swinging it like I was 25. But I can bring value. Look at the value I can bring to this team. And then have that manager let me bring that value in a great way. And that's what, so a lot of it's here, man. You hear it all the time. Baseball is 90% mental. And it's like, it might be 95% mental, man. Like, it might be more than that, because it's like, if you can flip that around and buy into what your role is and buy into how you can help a team, you can really do some great things and bring value. And that's what, even on my softball team, dude, I got a little girl that's this big. She don't have power, but she has learned to bunt. She's learned to slap. And that's what I told her, like, find how you can bring value to this team. You're not going to be hitting balls like our 3 and 4 hole hitters are.
Yeah.
But you're a great player, and our team feeds off that energy. And so when you're doing those little things, man, you bring as much value as that middle part of the lineup girl.
Yeah. It's kids imitate what they see, right? And they want to compete with their friends. They want to have fun, right? I mean, my daughter's 9 and she plays volleyball, and she just started playing relatively recently, and after like her first match, she saw this one girl that's spinning the ball in her fingers and slapping it and then overhand, serve the whole thing. She's like, I want to learn how to serve overhand. I'm like, whoa. Let's get her over the net underhand before we worry about, beach volleyball spiking it. But
what you hope, right, is that they watch and they grow a passion for the game.
Yeah.
And if they grow that, because it's like I told Emma Kate, my 11-year-old, when she was 6 playing t-ball and I coached her, she looked like she had no chance to ever play, anything, but she kept growing. She kept loving it. And all of a sudden she's 5'5" now, man. She's grown 5 inches in 6 months.
Wow.
And it's like now all of a sudden she's gotten strong, she's gotten confident. And so that's what I tell them. Just if you keep developing a passion for what you're doing, you'll hit that growth spurt and you'll have the mechanics to do it right.
Yeah. I mean, like you look at guys that you played with over your career, and I can think of a couple that I crossed paths with from the front office perspective, but it's one or two where you could tell they really just didn't like the game that much. They were just, God reached down and touched them, and they were blessed with talent. And they made a great living doing it. And they didn't dislike it, but they didn't really love the game. They were just doing it because it was their best option. Those guys are, people that are successful like that in life, I think, are a select few. That is very rare in my mind.
Yeah. And I always say this with signings these days, and you see these guys getting 250, 300 million bucks, and some of them never work out. I always say it's like, if I'm in the front office, the first thing I want to know, besides obviously them playing great, is do you love playing baseball? Yeah. Do you love being out there? Do you love putting the work in? Like, that's why with Bryce Harper, I sit there and look, and I'm like, he's worth every penny. That guy freaking plays with his hair on fire every night, whether he was making $1 million or $40 million. That's the guy I want to pay.
Yeah. Yeah. He was really polarizing for a long time, particularly early in his career. And I'm like, there's some antics, right, that you might not be totally on board with, but this, like, you cannot. This guy's like the second coming of Pete Rose as far as how he plays. I mean, he plays hard every single play, and if there's a little bit of flair that comes with that, so be it. But yeah, I agree with you. The guy loves the game. It's obvious. I've talked a lot about it. I was blessed to kind of intersect with Paul Goldschmidt when he was coming up in the minors and in Arizona in AA, and he wound up coming to the big leagues. And a year after that, we signed him to his first long-term deal. And it certainly wasn't all my decision, but I played a role in that process. And I was like, look, man, I got huge comfort. This guy, at worst, I think he's going to be an average everyday big league first baseman, right-handed hitting, right?
Yeah.
But he's going to be an 80 human being, right? He's not, I'm not going to worry about where this guy's money is going to go. I'm not worried about his work ethic, all these other things. And so, I mean, I personally place a huge value on that because it just mitigates, I don't say all of the risk, but a whole lot of it, because the person that you're buying at that point.
I love that you said that, because I did the Yankees game 2 weeks ago with the Diamondbacks for TBS, and first guy Aaron Boone brought up was Paul Goldschmidt, and said the first day of spring training he came in here and said, wherever you need me to hit in the lineup, when you want me to sit, when you want me to play, like, I'm ready to come off the bench if you need me defensively. And Booney was like, I've never had a player do that to me. I literally have never had a guy with his numbers and his stature. And he's like, this guy literally just came in and basically said, hey, if you decide not to play me, no, I'll be ready to play defense. He's like, as a manager, there's no better feeling to know that you have that guy, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's just one major thing you don't have to worry about. And he's just a special person. He's always been that way. He was like a mother duck in AA. Like, you just watched him. The kid, his teammates would just follow him around. Whatever he did, they were watching 100%. Him to follow. And that's,
why would you not?
Yeah, right. Because he's putting up numbers. And they see the way he goes about it, and he was a pro at a young age, and that stuff just permeates out. You see it now, from a different perspective. How much is your perspective? It sounds like so your career evolved, right? You were kind of a young phenom, carved out a long big league career, fall into a more of a role player at the end of your career. Now you're broadcasting and watching it from the booth. How much of has your perspective changed? And is there anything that you appreciate more or less, from the seat you're in now than when you're on the field?
I think what I appreciate now about my career is how I was able to handle adversity at certain different things and overcome it. You know, in 14, man, I had to go back to El Paso for 3 months and play AAA. And it could have been real easy after 9 years, 10 years to say, screw this,
Yeah.
I'm done. But the ability to fight through that, come back and play 2.5 more years in the big leagues, to me, it's a great lesson for my kids now to see, hey, when things get hard, man, you don't just walk away. You get in the fight, you grind, you get beat up, you come back the next day. You're probably going to get beat up that day too. You come back the next day. And I think for me, that's now looking down, I see guys announce, you know, when I'm announcing, I'm watching them play, I'm talking to these players, talking to GMs, assistant GMs, and it's like, man, this guy just kind of gave up, or this guy didn't do this. And I always remember thinking, like, that's the one thing I'm so glad my mom and dad instilled in me was a work ethic and ability to never give up. If you're going to do this, you're going to see it through all the way to the end, and you're going to see it through practicing and doing the best you can. And so for me, that's kind of what I did. I went back to AAA, man. I'm like, I can either sulk, and I tell people I got the greatest wife, man. She sat and basically the first 2 weeks in AAA, I felt bad. I felt sorry for myself. I was like sulking. I was playing horrible. And I remember my wife, literally, we had a 9-month-old at the time, and she was like, look, if you're going to suck, then just come home. Like, I need you at home. You know what I'm saying? Like, I need help with this baby. But if you're going to work and you're going to do what you've always done, let's do it. And it was like, I needed to hear that, right? Like, I needed to hear, like, I was sitting here feeling sorry for myself. And the other thing, Billy, I was missing a chance to invest into these guys that I was playing with that they'd never played a day in the big leagues. Here I was at 9.5 years already. They were looking for anything to glue, you know, any story I had, any advice I had. And I was so caught up in me. And it was like when I finally let go of that part and I was a great teammate, I worked with these guys. I ended up watching film, probably 50 hours with different players talking about their swings and this and that. And what happened to me, I ended up freaking raking and getting back to the big leagues because I wasn't just worried about myself.
Yeah.
I was worried about the process and helping these guys. And all of a sudden, what did I do? I had fun again. I had fun playing. I tell people those 3 months, and I had Pat Murphy, who, you know, just won the thing. And dude, Pat was the perfect guy for me at that moment. Because Pat he's a smart, you know, smart ASS man. And he is like all this stuff. And so there were games. It was great. Like Pat would be like, you know, are you going to get any hits for me today? Like, you know, I'm batting you third. You going to do anything for my team? And so again, like I said, you know me, I'm a happy-go-lucky guy. And when I play that way, I play well.
Yep.
And Pat was able to get the most out of me and got me back to the big leagues, man. And I'll never forget, you know, he knew how hard I was grinding. And so he actually knew I was getting called up in about the 6th inning of that game. And he called my wife, who was in El Paso. It was a home game, and my daughter. And he had them come break it to me that I was going back to the big leagues and flying to Chicago. And, you know, I get teary-eyed thinking about it. But it was so freaking cool to have, you know, my 1-year-old daughter and my wife tell me, like, you're going back.
That's incredible. What a great story.
It was awesome.
Yeah, and look, you nailed it there, man. I mean, you've accomplished a lot in your career, but I think that if it were me, that I would feel the same way. That may be the thing that I'm most proud of as far as being a role model for my kids and teaching them how to persevere through things. Because you get the guys that are on TV, you know, playing on ESPN, they get a lot of attention, and rightly so. But the guys that are grinding it out in AA and AAA and for 6, 7, 8 years, and they never get a sniff of the big leagues. I mean, I don't think people can appreciate how difficult that life is. And you had seen a little bit of it, and then you'd had the good life, and then to get thrust back in it, like, yeah, it's real. That would be real easy to be like, forget this, I'm going home.
You remember I had a guy, Wes Timmons, man, who was with the Braves forever.
Remember Wes?
Wes hit 330 every freaking year at AAA, and he never got the call. But every single guy that ever got called up, man, he was the first one to high-five him, first one to hug him, and now he's coaching baseball at Shorter College. And I always say it like, those players are so lucky. They got a coach that's going to give them perspective that they'll never be able to get from anywhere else.
Yeah. Yeah, no, 100%. And that's AAA is a hard place to be, right? It is. I talked to Snit a while back, and I told him it's maybe the hardest job in baseball. for a lot of the reasons you just touched on, right? You got a guy that's got 9.5 years in the big leagues. He's bitter. He doesn't want to be there. He's worried about himself. And you get all these other kids, and I know, knowing you the way I do, once you kind of flip that switch and became more of a teammate than just sort of an individual, you immediately have everybody on that team's rooting for you. Right. And you can feel that as it's helping you more than you probably even, can appreciate in real time.
Yep. I remember my wife and daughter broke the thing, and I walked into the locker room, dude, and they all had a beer and toasted me, and it was like they knew how hard I was grinding. But again, I was in the fight with them. I took every 5 a.m. Southwest flight with them and did everything that, you did. And looking back, it like I said, it's such a great moment. And I love it now because I sat in Pat Murphy's office last year, 2 weeks before the playoffs, and he was going to be manager. And we talked for 30 minutes about El Paso and AAA and funny memories, man. Not anything about what the Brewers were doing. Not that I'm getting ready to do the ALCS on TV. It was like we talked about those 3 months in El Paso, Texas. And God, it brought such joy to talk about that.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, look, it's those bonds are forged through sort of tough times, right, and adversity, and it's you're winning 8 in a row in the big leagues. You're probably not going to remember a lot of that stuff, but when you're hopping on those early flights and going through that stuff, and then you kind of reconvene, I love that. Did you ever think about getting into coaching? I mean, you talked about being in AAA and spending all this time watching film with these kids. Was that ever on the radar for you?
Dude, I have such a heart for it, and I would love to do it, but I will not do it until my kids are gone.
Yeah.
I don't care what opportunity. Yeah. I've told you, Chris Getz is one of my best friends, and we've talked about it. And I just, as much as I love the idea, and because I love coaching, man, I love coaching kids. I just know that I was the way I was because my mom and dad were there for almost everything that I did. And I just feel that I owe the same to my kids that my mom and dad did to me. And, I don't get me wrong. When my little guys in college, I'll be 55 years old, right? Like if I want to go back and coach, I'll have plenty of time to do that. And maybe I will. But at the same time, like I lived out my dream, man, playing in the big leagues. My dream was never to coach in the big leagues. And maybe I get that opportunity down the road. Mark DeRosa, man, he's my next door neighbor, and he's going to be managing Team USA again. And, he's had that desire to get into the coaching, but his son is a 9th grader. And I just keep imploring him. I'm like, man, just wait 3 more years. You do not want to miss going to watch him play high school baseball. And that's what I am. My Saturdays now consist of getting up at 8 a.m., and getting the kids breakfast, packing the car, and I'm at usually a 4 and 5-year-old rookie ball game for my son. My 9-year-old son plays lacrosse, loves it. I'm at him, and then I'm with my 12-year-old daughter's softball team, coaching them till 9 at night till we get knocked out of whatever tournament we're playing in. And I live for that, man. It's exhausting. I'm tired the next day, but to watch them play and to watch them learn to love to play sports and learn the life lessons, man. I keep looking as like, God bless me the ability to play, make a good living, and still be involved doing this, but still home to be able to invest into them. And I just don't want to miss that.
Yeah. Good for you, man. I mean, that's another thing I don't think people can appreciate is how much you're gone. Right. And
You're gone 8 months, man. And as my wife always says, and you know this, because I guarantee your wife said it to you when you were in the middle of it, you're here, but you're not really here.
Yeah. The homestands were actually harder. The homestands were harder than the road trips for me because you're gone all day. You're there. For me, it was in the office at 9 till midnight, right? Till after the game. You're coming home. You're exhausted. You get as much sleep as you can. You get up. You're gone the next day. There's no time. So you're like, she thinks you're going to be there. And it's so.
Well, and that's what my wife used to say. She'd be like, we'd be having breakfast at 10 in the morning with the 2 kids. And she'd be like, you're here with your body, but mentally, and it's tough because in my mind, I'm like, shoot, man, I'm facing Jacob deGrom that night.
Yeah.
Like, you never can turn it off. And so the one thing I love about what I'm doing now is I can turn it off, man. I can be home all day, not a worry in the world about what I'm going to do that night announcing, and really invest in my kids. And I don't want to give that up right now.
Yeah. Good for you. Was that desire sort of the impetus behind the Pure Athlete venture, or was it the other way around? You said it kind of opened your eyes to started doing that, open your eyes to what you're doing with your kids. How did that evolve for you?
You know what? I end up, I do some speaking now, public speaking and stuff. And I spoke to this lighting company called Acuity down in Atlanta. And I met a guy named Britt Lee who set that up for 30 years. And he was telling me an idea that him and another buddy had for about 5 years now, because they already went through it with their kids and just the dangers of youth sports and wanting to do this. And we just kind of kept in touch for 4 months, bouncing off ideas, doing this. And then I really started coaching 3 of my kids because they were old enough, and started seeing the injustice, the bull crap, the stuff that you don't. And I'm like, you know what, man? I'm doing this. And I didn't know where it would go. We had Jason Campbell, we had David Pollock, some of these guys, and they were throwing these nuggets out that were just golden, man. And I started getting texts from parents and people that I knew that were like, man, I loved listening to that. It really resonated. And so we kind of just rolled with it, man. And I love giving an example because I've known Matt Ryan for a long time. When he got drafted by the Falcons, you know, we golfed together and all this. And I bugged him for 6 months to come on the podcast. And he kept, oh, I'll get to it. I'll get to it. I'll get to it. Finally, he retired. And his boys were 5, and he coached them in T-ball.
He saw it.
And 2 weeks into the season, not only did he call me, but he was adamant, like, I'm coming on next week. Like, I'm doing this with y'all. Because he's like, I got so much I got to say. and so ultimately, that's kind of the route we wanted. Because, you know, man, you've seen too many relationships from parents and kids to get ruined because of sports. And I'm like, it's not that important to ruin this stuff. So let's figure out a way that we can make this a good experience for everybody.
Yeah.
And so we kind of got going, man, and we've had great guests. And like I said, I've learned more in almost, you know, it'll be 3 years in October. I've almost learned more in 3 years from doing this, from these athletes. And it's helped me with my kids, man, and how to navigate that world and how to navigate sports specialization, multi-sports. You know, like my daughter loves softball. You said your daughter plays volleyball. My daughter just started volleyball this year because I'm like, you can't just play one sport. I'm not letting you just play one sport.
Yep.
You're too young for that. And what happens if it doesn't work out? You know, you need to be able to play something in high school. And so she's doing volleyball now. And of course, what happens? She loves it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, this is just good stuff. This is, you know, little things along the way that I can learn as parents to help our kids grow and fall in love with multiple sports.
Yeah. Yeah. We share a lot of the same thoughts on that. And my kids are a little bit younger. So I haven't had the same experience personally yet, but I've got tastes of it. And you see, my son played T-ball a couple of years ago for the first time. And, you know, coach has got the $200 Oakleys and the flat brim hat, and he's chewing seeds and he's sitting on the bucket and he's screaming at these kids. They literally don't know, do I run to first base or do I run to third base?
100%.
You know, and it's like that poor kid's never going to play again because he's terrified that this grown man's screaming at him. And, you know, and the kids don't know any better. You know, it's like, hey, I love volleyball. So all I want to do is play volleyball. Well, okay, great. You can learn a lot. My wife and I have this debate all the time. I was always a team sport guy. Like I played baseball, football, basketball. I didn't grow up playing tennis or golf or any of that. And there's clearly things that you can learn from both, right? Like Rory sitting over that putt to win it is a very different experience than, you know, the left guard in the high school championship football game.
Yeah.
Right? And they're both really, really valuable. And if you never get exposed to it, like I always say, like my job is not to, as a parent, is just to raise good humans. It's not to raise successful people or, you know, pro athletes or what, you know, whatever you want to call it. It's just like, just be good humans, which, you know, there's seemingly a shortage of sometimes.
No, 100%. And I tell people that what I want for my kids in sports is not for my kid to get a college scholarship. I truly don't. I could care. I already got bank accounts for them to go to college. Trust me, like that's taken care of. I want my kids to learn work ethic, discipline, how to be a good teammate, how to suck and come back the next week and work even harder and see the fruits of your labor pay off. That's what I want for my kids.
Yeah.
And I guess it's just crazy to me that a lot of parents don't see that. and don't want that. And like you said, that 5 and 6 year old coach screaming at a kid because you don't even know the game.
Yeah.
And so, like, that's the thing you'll see, and you'll appreciate this, but I've coached T-ball now for 4 seasons with my daughter. She's 6, and we've never won more than 2 games. But every single girl on my teams have signed up to play the next year. I don't care. I have a set schedule, and I move the girls around every position. So my 2 best players, they played 2 innings in the outfield.
Yep.
And I refuse to do it at that age. I refuse to care if we win or lose.
Yep.
And it's great. We got beat the other night like 17-4. And our girls are all asking, did we win or lose? They got no flipping idea.
Right.
And you'll always have the one parent that goes, well, my daughter does. And you know what my dad says, Jeff? When you were 6, you knew whether we won or lost, but you were the only one on the team.
Mm-hmm.
And he said there were times you'd come up, why can't I play circle? My dad was like, beat it, get to the outfield, because I told you to, And he's like, you're 6 years old. You're not going to tell me where you're going to play and what you're going to do.
Right.
Like, you go out there, you be a good teammate. Now looking back, all those things that my dad did was designing me to continue to grow. And like you said, become a good kid, become a good friend to people. And I just happen to be able to take it even farther. But my brother and sister, they played Division II and Division III sports, and they worked just as hard as I did. And now they're great, man. They're both successful. They got great families, and like that's what I want for my kids.
Right. Yeah, I mean, going through all that stuff and your point about failure is a great one. Because you're not. We did this in pro baseball. We did it with the Braves. You were a different part of your career, but I had a lot of conversations that always intrigued me. Guys like you are a perfect example, right? Get to big leagues at 21. The first time you fail, if that's on national TV with 40,000 people in the stands, like, I don't know how you're going to respond to that. You don't know either because you've never failed, right? So trying to build that skill set, getting exposed to adversity when adversity doesn't come naturally because you're so gifted, that's what's going to make them successful in life. That's going to make people successful in business, right? Like, you start some startup and it just takes off like a rocket, and you're living the high life for 2 or 3 years. Like, what happens when you hit your first like big blip? Something happens out of your control. Like, how are you going to react? Because you've just been like, making it rain for 36 months, or whatever the hell it is.
Yeah, I tell people this all the time. My really true first adversity was when I was 24 years old. After 2.5 years of 100 RBIs, Gold Glove, Sports Illustrated, and I didn't know how to handle it. I wasn't equipped. Yeah. I really wasn't. And my mom and dad helped me kind of get there, but I wasn't. In high school, dude, I was 15-0 my junior, senior year. We were 34-2 and 35-1 in baseball. And I didn't know how to deal with that, man. And I tell people in 2008 with the Braves, I would have listened to the barber tell me what to do with my hands hitting. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I was down for anything.
Yeah.
And so I want my kids to be prepared for that. So I'll be honest, there's times where my kids don't get the job done, and I'm like, good.
Yeah.
Like, let's give it a day or two, and then let's talk about it, and let's figure out that next time when you're in that situation, what can we try to do different so you're successful? But I also want them to know that I don't really give a crap in a 6U game, in a 12U game like that. There's nothing you're going to do that's going to buy my love. No hits, no whatever.
Yeah.
And so walking through that with your kids, and that's why, going back to what you asked me, like, that's why I want to be home, and that's why I can't coach, because I can't miss those moments with my kid, like Braden. And this has honestly kind of put me over the top 2 years ago. He does lacrosse now. So my son hates baseball, my 9-year-old son, which is hilarious. He wants nothing to do with it, does not want to throw.
Uh-huh.
We throw the football, we shoot hoops, we play tennis, we golf together. I'm like, hey, you want to go play catch? No, I'm good. But he loves lacrosse, and so does it. But 2 years ago, I was in Texas for a weekend series with the Braves, and Braden was good enough to hit. He never needed a tee, and like, he was good. So I wouldn't let him hit off the tee. I wanted him to learn, like my dad did. If you get 5 pitches, dude, and if you can't put one in play, then sit down.
Mm-hmm.
Go sit in the dugout.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if he put it on a tee, he was going to whack it to the fence, and he's going to get inside the park home run. And I'm like, no, that's not where you're at now. When you were 5 and whatever you did, but you played. So, well, he struck out 4 times in a game. And my wife's sitting there texting me. I'm on FaceTime with her. Like, she is going crazy. We got to let him hit off the tee. And I'm like, no, he does not need to hit off the tee. He's got to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the worst day, dude. My wife wanted to kill me. She literally for 48 hours. But I'm like, this is a lesson.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that killed me was I couldn't be there to help him through that lesson and help him understand. And that's when I told my wife, I'm like, I'm done.
Yeah.
Like, I'm done being on the road. Yeah. I'm done doing this. Like, as much as I love announcing, as much as I love this, like, I got to be there for those moments because I want him to understand, like, and I told him, I was like, dude, your dad struck out 5 times in a game. I did in Florida one time. And I remember I left 11 guys on base. Like, it was like, oh my God.
Uh-huh.
But I wanted to tell Braden what I love Bobby Cox is if I was managing that team, Billy, my ass is on the bench the next day. 100%. Not only did I strike out 5 times and I was batting 6, I get into the locker room the next day and I was batting 5th. Bobby moved me up a spot.
Yeah, that would have been my guess with Bobby. Yeah.
And you know what I did? 3 for 4 with 2 doubles and 3 RBIs.
Yep.
And I remember going, here's a manager who had confidence in me when I had 0 confidence in myself. And I remember after that game, I had a cold beer, man, and because I had been 24 hours spinning in my head.
Mm-hmm.
And I just walked into Bobby's office and said, Bobby, I got to ask you, why in the hell did you play me today? And Bobby said, because you're a great player, man. And I knew the last thing especially you needed was to sit on the bench and just relive every moment and think that I didn't have confidence in you. And he just told me, he's like, dude, you're going to have crappy days. You better get over it because you're going to have another one at some point this year that's just as bad. And you got to find a way to get over it.
Yeah.
And is one of the best lessons I ever learned in baseball, man. And I remember thinking, if I can get through that, I can get through anything.
Yeah, dude. I think it's first of all, that's quintessential Bobby Cox, right? I mean, just like the unassuming sort of mental ninja that he's just going to make you better without you even realizing it.
Yep.
But I think it's one of the hardest. It's what I struggle with as a parent because I spent a lot of time thinking about, I really want what you just touched on, making sure that they're equipped to handle adversity. At the same time, it's like, it's hard to watch your kids fail, right, in real time and know that hey, they may try to jump off the tree branch and they might break their leg, right? But you also don't want them to be afraid of everything, right? So where's that balance of, organically coming across some adversity and then that's what I kind of get geeked up like you do. Like, all right, great. Now let's figure out how to come out the other side of this and what can we learn from it? I still remember my son was little. I don't think it was T-ball or anything. I can't remember what he was doing, but did something good. And he's like, Daddy, you proud of me? I'm like, buddy, I'm always proud of you. Right. Like it's got nothing. And it's just like this, like innocent, he did good. Are you proud of me? Of course yeah, you did a great job. But you could have struck out 4 times. I'm still going to be proud of you. And that just having that, security blanket or security of knowing that like Dad's got my back no matter what. He's not going to chew my ass out if I strike out 4 times. Right. Like, go have fun, go play free. Like we're all better when we're free, to your point earlier, right? Like you started being yourself again and lo and behold, the performance, ticks up.
We did a podcast last month and we had my dad on.
I saw that.
And it was really, really cool. And I love what my dad said. He said, there's nothing worse as a parent than seeing your kid suffer or see him disappointed in something. You hurt for him. You hurt that they feel that way, but you also know, and that's what he always said, that my job at that point is I'm your parent. I'm not your friend necessarily at that moment. And there's times where you have to make those decisions. Like, is this where my kid needs to learn a lesson? Is this where they need to learn something? And again, like I said, now looking back as a parent myself, like, you know how it is, man. Like there's so much I do. And my wife, my dad's name's Dave, and my wife every once in a while will be like, all right, Dave, and she'll call me Dave. But I also know that, like, I remember me going through that and I remembering how helpful it was and how much it drove me. And I'm like, you know what? They got to learn.
Yeah. Why wouldn't you do that at that point, right? You saw it firsthand.
Yep. Yep. So those are all great teaching moments. I think that we strive for as parents that you want for your kids.
Yeah. So I got a 3-part question for you. You've already touched on some of it, but what's one piece of advice you'd give to a 10-year-old kid who just loves playing, fill in the blank, baseball, football, soccer, whatever? What's one piece of advice you'd give to that kid?
My advice, man, would be have fun and grow a passion. Ask questions. That's what doesn't get my son's playing football for the first time this year coming up. He is all excited but there's a lot of kids that have played now for 2-3 years that are going to have a better grasp of the game. And I tell them, I say, ask questions. Ask the coach why I'm supposed to do this. Well, understand what you're going through. So I always say that, and know that you're 10 years old. You're not a finished product. I love saying this. You do not know what you're going to be until you go through puberty. Not even close, man. We've seen girls and boys grow. I just told you, my daughter grew 5 inches in 6 months, and all of a sudden her swing speed has gone from a wet newspaper to actually freaking dropping the barrel on the ball, and you're seeing it come off. And so I'm like, if you love to play, go play. Do not let someone – there's going to always be someone that's bigger, stronger, faster in doing it, but don't let that deter you from what you want to do. If you love to play any sport, go play it and have fun and learn the game. Because if you learn the game and you have fun, you're going to get better and you're going to understand what you're doing.
Yeah. Same question about parents.
Get the hell out of the way. Literally, get out of the way. Be there. Be there for your kids in so many different roles. Some days be a coach. Some days be a support system. Some days be a crying shoulder for your kid to tell you what's going on. What's wrong, and understand that your kid's not going to get a scholarship at 10 years old, man. Like, it's not. I love Tim Corbin, man. He's a good buddy of mine, the coach of Vandy, and I love how he does things there. And he always tells me, he's like, you can tell, Jeff, tell these parents, when your kid's 14, I'm not recruiting them. We're 5 years away. And he's like, A, I might be dead. B, I don't even know where I'm going to be. And so, parents, just enjoy the journey. Enjoy what we just talked about. The moments that you can come beside your kid and love on them, man. Encourage them. Are you going to have to push them? Absolutely. I push my kids. There's times I'm like, you need to get out and do something. Mm-hmm. But come beside them in this and realize that it's not, if your kid doesn't have a great tournament, if your kid doesn't have a good game, it's not the end of the world. It's not. And you only jumping on them right after the game and getting on them, it's going to make them, for the most part, want to play. And as I tell parents, there's always going to be an outlier. There's going to be the Bryce Harpers, the Serena Williams, the Tiger Woods. As you said, God just touched him, man, and it was like, it is what it is. But realize your kid's probably not that.
Yeah.
And so, let them grow a passion for the game. Smoltzy said the best on our podcast, if your passion as a parent is greater than your kid's passion for what they're doing, it's not going to end well. And I learned that firsthand with my son at baseball. I forced him to play a whole nother season, and it was the most miserable season we've ever had. As my wife said, it became me and him just yelling at each other because he would back out of the box, and here I am, stay in there, stay in there. He's scared of the ball. I'm doing this. Now he's playing lacrosse. We had practice last night. He gets home from school at 3 o'clock, dude. He's got his gear laid out, his jersey laid out, his water bottle. He is gassed up and ready to go to practice. Who am I to get in the way of that, right? Let them go. Let them do what they want to do.
Third part to the question is same question for coaches.
And I would say this, as a coach, number one, first and foremost, know what you're talking about. Know what you're doing. I think that's important. I get it that there's a shortage of coaches sometimes, but if you have a coach that knows the game and knows what they're doing, usually it's going to be fun for the kids because there's going to be some sort of organization. They're going to be taught the right way. Number two, do not play daddy ball. I hate daddy ball worse than anything in the world, and you call it out. Where your kid ends up on the totem pole, let him go. I've been coaching a travel softball team for 4 years now. These girls have been together since they were 9, 10, 11, and now we're kind of 11 and 12. We have 11 girls on the team. My daughter started out hitting 8th, and she's hitting 5th now. And I'm probably justified to move her to 3rd or 4th, but she's good in this position. I like the way it's going. Don't play daddy ball, man. It gives your kids an unrealistic expectation of what they can do. And I told him and Kate back then, I said, you deserve to hit 8th. You don't deserve to hit 3rd or 4th. You know? And I said, show me why I should move you up. And slowly but surely, she kept working. She kept getting better. She kept getting better. And so, she's hitting 5th now. And I said, you deserve to be there. So those are the top 2 things. And number 3, make it fun for the kids, man. Like, we had Tony Dungy on. He's one of the greatest to do at the NFL. And he said, always remember fundamentals. What's the first 3 letters of fundamentals? Fun.
Right.
And if you're not having fun, and I just told you this when I played in the big leagues, if I was not having fun, I definitely could not bring out the best in myself. And, and yes, it's a business in that sense, but yes, there's other things. But if you're not having fun, you're not gonna put the effort in, and you're not gonna get better. So coaches have to make it fun. Yes, you're gonna work on fundamentals at practice. Yes, you got to do stuff, but make sure you do fun stuff during practice too, man. Do base running, relay drills. Do a fun game. I do this with my girls sometimes. Like, my 5 and 6-year-old team, man. I put cupcakes at home plate, and they got to run and touch every bag under a certain amount of time for each girl, depending. And if they get home, they get the cupcake, right? Like, make it fun, because if you do that, they're going to want to keep playing. And when they keep playing, they're going to get better. And, when they continue to grow, and like I said, if I didn't make it fun for my daughter and she quit at 6 or 7, I'd be so devastated by how she's doing now and how much she loves it that she would have missed out on all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
So know what you're talking about. Don't play daddy ball, man. Be realistic for your kid and for the other parents to see it. And then have fun, because these are moments, these are years you'll never get back. And I remember Jay Billis on a podcast saying, 96.2% of players never play past high school. Mm-hmm. So why are we not making it fun for these kids and letting them enjoy the moments while they're doing it?
Yeah. I mean, you touched on it. You said some of the best memories you have was from high school sports, right? You got 100%. Over a decade in the big leagues, right? So what's the most fun you've ever had on an athletic field? I won't even limit it to baseball.
Football.
High school football.
State championship game my senior year. We were down at Northside Warner Robins, 15,000 people there. We're nervous. We're sad because this is it.
Yeah.
But you're playing with all your best friends, man, and you're looking, and it's like right before we went out, we were like, let's run it back one more time, boys. And I still remember that day. I'll be honest with you. I played in the World Series with the Rangers in 2010, and as cool as that was, it will never trump. And I still remember December 22nd, 2001, man. That was our state championship football game. And we talk about it now, 24 years later. But it was, your best friends. You'd sweat it all summer, all the practices, all the things for that moment right there. And to do it with those guys, that's why it was still the greatest. And I remember my dad having actual scouts going into my senior year, Billy, to ask him, you're crazy to let your kid play football and risk getting hurt.
Yeah.
And my dad was like, I told every one of them, you go look at my son down there, how much fun he's having. Who am I to sit there and tell him he can't do that? Like, if he gets hurt, the good Lord has got a plan somewhere along the way to do it. But, I remember that as still the best game, funnest game of my life.
Well, Dad nailed that one, man. I mean, you go from there to everything you did athletic after that professionally, and that's the pinnacle for you, right? That story needs to get out more, right? To parents, to kids. That's what I want for my kids. Not because I wanted to get a college scholarship, not because I wanted to be all state. I just want you to have that experience. I played high school football, and I feel the same way. Not at the level that you did, but my buddies that I played high school football with, we still joke about it. And it becomes this cliche, like, oh, you guys reliving the glory days, right? But like, you go through things as part of a team when it is your whole world. When you're 16, 17, 18, it means everything to you. You're having a blast doing it. And you fast forward 25 years, you're like, man, that was that was it. Like that was the highlight,
Yep.
you know? And so, all your points about youth
And his
sport.
parents, right? Like that's what my dad says. He's like, me and your mom had just as much fun watching you play 6-year-old T-ball as we did when we came to Turner Field to watch you play for the Braves. Because he's like, at the end of the day, we're just watching our kid play.
Right.
He's doing what he loves. And my dad said, like anything, you just did it longer than a lot of kids get the opportunity to, and you were lucky. But it doesn't take away from all those times we watched your brother, your sister do the same thing. Like, so that's what I say for parents. Enjoy the process, man. Enjoy watching your kids. Enjoy the life lessons that you're going to get to do along the way, because, you know, ultimately, I remember Tim Corbin saying, I always said when they asked him about his kids, and he said, what I want is I want my kid to come home during Thanksgiving when he's married with his wife to our house.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he goes, that's what always drove me, is I didn't want him not coming home for Thanksgiving and for Christmas and for those things.
That's great, man. I love that. You've touched on it a couple times, but I got to ask you before you go. You talked a lot about being a good teammate. How do you define a good teammate for you?
Man, being a good teammate to me is someone that, like I talked about, when things aren't going well, you're the guy that's keeping everybody up, whether it's for them, yourself, whoever. One of the greatest teammates I ever played with was David Wright in New York, man. I mean, that guy, no matter what happened, every single night, talked to the media, talked to teammates, good or bad. And I always tell people, how can you not want to follow that, man? When you see a guy that leads with that kind of passion, and I love it. My daughter, I watch her, she strikes out, she comes in the dugout, she's laughing, she's joking with her teammates. And I'm like, I wish I had that. I wish I had that ability to just say, hey, you know what? I'll get them next time. Mm-hmm. But that's the most important. And you know this, Billy, like one of the main reasons I kept going in 15 and 16, there were other people out there probably that was similar to my skill set. I was a good teammate, man. I was great in the clubhouse. People knew that I would come beside guys and help them and do that. And I always say, if you're a good teammate, you're going to get the benefit of the doubt a lot of the time if it's between you and somebody else.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, like I go back, my buddies in high school, all the publicity I got my senior year, like they'll tell you all the time, like that's the greatest compliment I give and why we're such good friends. They were like, dude, you were the same guy you were when you were in 8th grade as just a dork going to these tournaments. Like you were getting all this attention, but you were the same teammate. You were the same guy in the locker room every single day, joking, doing dumb stuff, doing that. And that was because my mom and dad, they instilled it in me. Like it's nothing that I did. They ironed that in me from a young age that it's more important to be a good teammate and to be unselfish than it is to be the other way. Because they always said, if you're a bad teammate, at some point, no one's going to want to play with you.
Correct.
And you know as well as I do, those are the guys that are sitting at the end of the bench by themselves, or when they're scuffling and no one's in the grind with them because you know they weren't there for anybody else. So I tell kids that all the time, man. Encourage, be good teammates, cheer people on, because at the end, that's more important than anything.
Totally agree. I try to tell kids that every chance I get, because that happens. It doesn't just happen at, rec league, T-ball or whatever. It happens in high school. It happens in college. It happens in the pros. Yep. I mean, coaches don't want to deal with the kids that are bad teammates. It's that high performing, high maintenance sort of continuum that you try to balance. Yeah, if you're talented enough, we'll let you go for a little bit. But I always wanted to watch the off-ball stuff. What are you doing after you strike out, right? What are you doing when your teammate makes an error? Like, what's going on? How are you responding to that? And guys that I talked about, Kevin Towers earlier, he instilled a lesson in me early where we went out, we felt decent about the core of our team, but it wasn't a winning club yet. And he went out, he's like, I'm gonna go pay a premium for 2 role players, 2 guys that are kind of past their prime. They're just going to be pinch hitters and they're going to be backups, but they're like 80 human beings, leadership, communication. Yep. And he went out and did that. And it's like, it was tangible. You could see it. Right. So not only are you like short leash if you're a jerk, but way longer leash if you're a good human and a good teammate. And that's the number one rule I try to instill with my kids and anywhere else in sports. Just be a good teammate. We all kind of know what that means. You don't have to define it, but just be a good teammate.
Yeah. I'll finish with this, man. Gino Ariyama, who just won the, UConn again. He's got a quote that says, like, if I come watch you play you can play at UConn. I'm not wasting my time going to watch someone that can't play at my school. So I already know you're talented. He said exactly what you just said. I want to see if you give your coach a high five when they pull you off, if you're giving everybody else high fives, because ultimately, if I get enough of those on one team, I'll be successful.
No doubt.
And I agree with you. What Kevin Towers, God rest his soul, he was the same kind of way. Like, I'm building Dayton Moore, one of my favorite human beings. I'm building a culture that is going to promote that. And if we do that, we're going to win. And I always say that with Dayton. No small market team has won the World Series in forever except Kansas City. And there's a reason, man. He had built a culture around that place, that he had good people and good players, that everybody bought into a system.
Well, and you could see it in real time when it was happening. You're like, there's just something about it. Like, this doesn't make sense on paper, but I don't want to play him. You could just feel it.
No, absolutely. And they're doing it again right now. Yeah. It's funny. They're building that again with JJ, who's under him, and some of that stuff. But I agree, man. It's so important to be a great teammate, be accountable. And you know what, man, if you do that, you're going to be successful in life.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, Frenchie, look, man, really appreciate the time. Shared some great stuff. Make sure everybody's listening to what Pure Athlete, right? Podcast.
Yeah, pureathleteinc.com. And we've got, different people in there, a lot of males, a lot of females, coaches, nutritionists, all that good stuff. We're trying to cover and get a lot of different perspectives from everybody, but it's been fun. And I could talk with you all day on this, man, because I just, the next generation is who, and as we said, you're the same way. You were in baseball forever, I was, but our main job here is to raise our kids and to have them be great human beings.
Well, I completely agree, and I think that some of the stuff you shared today needs to get shared more frequently, because all the other stuff we get shared, right? It's all the 9U rankings and bat speed and exit velo when you're 11 and stuff like that. There's plenty of information out there now, but education about what sort of how the thing works, where the priorities are, what the numbers bear out as far as your likelihood of going on to the next level, and kind of what you're going to be left with if you do take it too far. I think that's critical. So I appreciate you sharing your perspective on it. You got a really unique one, man. It's been a lot of fun.
Thanks, bud. Thanks for joining.
All right, buddy. Talk soon.
Let me join. All right.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the No One Is Watching podcast. If you haven't already, be sure to hit subscribe to be notified of future episodes. If you'd like to support the show, please take a second, leave a rating and review, or share it with your friends. If you're interested in similar content, you can check out my website at nooneiswatching.com, where you can subscribe to the newsletter, read my blog, or follow me on your social media platform of choice. Look, your time is valuable, so thank you for lending me some.